Boom, first time. That's right. What's up?
It's a very strong hero. It just basically counters everything. If Virtus Pro is going to try to run in, I mean, Clockwork's there, and you can't, right? And they needed a kind of initiator, assuming that Bloodseeker's not going to be zillion speed and run in. Then Clockwork is there to do that job as well. I really like that. I'm kind of curious to see Winter Wyvern, if we're going to see that from Virtus Pro, because that would go very well with the line that they have right now as well.
I think we should ask Chobra. He seems to know.
Yeah, what is Winter Wyvern going to be picked?
What's the next pick for VP?
That's a great question. I actually don't think it's going to be Winter Wyvern.
That's not a good enough answer. You have a really
but it
good
can be the correct answer.
You have really good
That's an excellent question. You know, because I wanted to pose that question to you guys, and now you're turning it on me.
Well, ask Winter.
Let's ask Winter. That sounds like a great.
Come on.
Sorry, dude. I have Lotus Orb.
That's been Winter's
That
theme
actually,
for today.
if you have Lotus Orb, you still have to answer, but then he has to answer as well.
That's right. Who has to answer first, though?
I think he does.
Okay, boom.
What?
You've got 1 minute and 16 seconds.
No.
I mean,
Probably not.
Probably not. But looking at the options, I mean, Virtus Pro, they're still looking to see who they want to put mid. Of course, with the Lina on the other side, is that much of a threat that Virtus Pro wants to consider? Or do you just assume that it's maybe not going to come there and try to go on with a different pick?
I mean, if they're going for lane dominance, like usually G does, like Viper versus Lina would be a good matchup for G. But I'm not sure if that's the hero here.
Nope.
So the task
You were
is
right,
going...
Chobra. It's Rubik.
Yeah, that's right. You know, had it the whole time.
It was not
Wyvern.
Wyvern.
It was not Wyvern.
So it's going to be a Rubik Gyro safe lane. That is a good way of dealing with the clock as well. Rubik's in general better, one of the few better supports are dealing with the power cogs in the lane, since you can lift him out of it. So definitely a good support in that regard.
Just missing a G hero there.
It is actually one of the absolute worst heroes you can play against as Clockwork. Like, out of any combination of heroes you can possibly put, where it's two heroes, Gyro, Rubik.
Bane?
Is horrible.
Bane Gyro?
Bane Marana.
Okay.
Bane Marana is also
Okay.
pretty... But yeah, Bane Gyro is also annoying.
Right.
Rubik Gyro is definitely very high up on the lanes you do not want to face list as Clockwork. So he's not going to enjoy that. On the other hand, it's still, even with the counter pick of Rubik, I still think it's they would have maybe even chosen to pick it after the Rubik, had they seen it, because of the way it plays into their lineup and what it actually still counters. So hard for lane, for overall game plan, is still very valuable. Okay.
There's their answer.
This is a lot of spell burst. Okay,
Yeah.
MVP hot takes. What's the win condition? How do you break the base?
Well, they are not going to go
same,
for
right?
Zeus this time.
It's the same versus EG. They had the
seems so.
double zap.
Oh,
The,
yeah.
li- the Lion and the Lina.
No, that was Vici Gaming.
Oh, no,
right?
it was a Vici.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
don't think it was hot
versus
takes.
EG, I think.
Okay.
And against that, EG even picked the Wyvern. They actually ended up, because they were like, you had... Or was that matchup? I think it was that matchup.
They had the Dazzle too, right?
Yes, they did
And we
have
were
that.
talking about how it's pretty hard to hit that grave, but he did quite often, and you also...
No, I think
was
we're
the
starting to
Wyvern.
mix together multiple games now.
The only the trouble that I see for MVP Hot 6 is that if later on in the game, mid-game, Gyrocopter has a few items, goes for Flak Gun, and Lina and Lion are going to drop fairly fast. And then you've got Earthshaker there, so there's quite a few of AoE damage, and MVP Hot 6 just looks fairly squishy at this point.
I actually like Puck against the Lina and Lion, but it would mean that the lane might be difficult for Puck, so it's just... Oh, there's still Queen, actually.
Wow. I can't believe
Oh, okay.
we actually completely forgot about it.
Yeah, so Quaff was open the
Well,
whole
TA.
time. And I was wondering, if maybe that comes up soon for Virtus Pro, but they prioritized the Rubik. It actually gets blast banned, which is not something we've seen so far in TI.
I think this is the first time it's gone through the first phase.
it has
at all.
never gone through so far.
Yeah.
And
always
Maybe
been
it's
banned
done
pick.
once.
you were talking about Lina and Lion, like Shiva said, very squishy, and TA is going to be able to burst the heroes down very easily, and the combination of Sigil plus traps as well will make them... It's difficult for them to run away, except for the Bloodseeker, I guess, because it doesn't count.
But he might get lifted instead. Who
You
knows?
can't slow that guy. It's just...
It's just so fast.
The unfortunate thing here is this is another game where, similar to yesterday, I think Viper would be a good pick for MVP Hot 6, but they don't play it. At least they don't play it on MP in the mid lane. And it's a good it's a
Okay.
decent matchup against TA. It's actually a good matchup against TA, Viper. And again, it would allow them to start pressuring towers. But what I like about this Pugna pick instead is that they have something that destroys towers.
Right, I was
this
just about
time
to say.
around. They need it.
At least they rounded it out with something that's not all focused on just kills. Winter, how do you feel about
A
that?
semi-counter, I say, a soft counter towards Lanaya because you can decrep your teammates and whatnot. You can kite him along a long time in team fights. But the other thing is the combination again with the heroes that have the decrep into like the zaps. That's
Yeah.
gonna hurt.
Somebody gonna die.
That would actually prompt the TA and the Gyro to go for fairly early BKBs, I'd say.
That's the weakness of
Yeah.
MVP Hot 6's lineup. It's actually super hard countered by BKBs.
Yeah.
But it is MP on the Lina, so he could get an axe. at
Yeah, I
least.
mean there's Rupture as well, so but majority of the damage comes from spell.
All right, well, the game is kicking off between VP and MVP Hot 6. VP and Hot 6, again, I mean, we mentioned that one point. It's, don't rest too heavily on that. But at the same time, this match is going to matter a lot. If they can 2-0, that's a huge burst for them. If they can even 1-1, it's going to be a slow but steady climb. Even if they start in the lower bracket, that's a confidence boost to say, all right, we still have a shot at going into top 8. So VP versus Hot 6, we'll just wait until the game commences here in game number 1. Overall, how do you feel? I mean, we talked about Hot 6 at least rounding their draft out with something they can push down towers. How about VPs?
I think VP, I really like their lineup, and I think if this game goes past 30 minutes, VP should take this easily. Depending on the advantage that Hot 6 gets at the start, if it's gigantic, then who knows what can happen. But I think Hot 6 is maybe in a bit of trouble in this game.
They've kind of cornered themselves
Yeah.
a little bit. It's pretty one-dimensional, the draft they have. Whereas
I mean,
VP's
it's similar to the
good
EG game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar to the EG game where they picked the Zeus last. We were like, okay, they have to win this early game super hard, otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed like VP had that same idea, banning out that bounty hunter at the very end, just denying any sort of that early huge advantage. Game is commencing. Game 1 between VP and MVP Hot 6, everyone.
But we got to give a quick introduction here to everybody who's now joining us on the main stream. We have VP facing up against MVP Hot 6, the first game of Blitz and I casting together, of course, myself, Capitalist, and Blitz. Blitz, your general thoughts on these two teams? Do you have a prediction one way or the other?
MVP Hot 6's lineup is really unforgiving. You don't have heroes that can tank anything. So the thing is, if you have heroes that can tank or re-engage, it generally means that you can just outlast somebody in a fight. Like, VP have the ability to outlast you in a fight.
Right.
But MVP Hot 6, they've got heroes that just have to pretty much YOLO in and commit. That's the thing, is that if you rupture somebody, you have to kind of fight around it. You have to, like, force the fight at that point. Same with a Lion. If a Lion, as a support, blink hexes, stuns, and fingers, then you're pretty much all in committed. You have to get into that fight. Whereas VP's lineup is a lot more forgiving because they have options. Like, you can go for the split push and feel relatively safe, especially if G gets something like a blink dagger.
Doesn't that, to you, then give a little bit of a question mark as to the last pick, Pugna? When it comes to the support capabilities of the Pugna and being able to heal his allies up, it doesn't really seem valuable here because Bloodseeker and Lina are such squishy cores. You feel like you need to tank your heroes in order to really utilize that sustain.
I think I really like the Pugna mainly because you want something to follow up the Clockwork's initiation, and there weren't a lot of better options. Like, Pugna drops the ward after the Clockwork hooks in, and then you get an ideal fight no matter what. Like, Illidan will probably get a BKB at some point, but other than that, the people from VP, their lineup isn't the best. And if you think about it, how it applies to Rubik at the same time, like Spellsteal, you probably don't do too much damage to yourself, but everything that you do on Rubik is pretty costly.
Early bit of harassment here. Sunby is going to take a lot of damage. In fact, Villadin wants to. He could go for the dive with the second rocket barrage, but doesn't want to try and risk it. And Sunby will be forced to blow his healing salve. He actually doesn't just run back to base. He pops that one. Illidan, he's going to eat the trees. Yeah, that's exactly what he's trying to do here. As Dire's side Clockwork, what you want to do is utilize the cogs in order to force, you put a square right here, you kill the right side cog, and they march through this area. If you, as Radiant side, actually kill these trees, it completely stops that block.
Yeah, it's just a good maneuver to do, especially in the early game when there isn't much to do, but
Yeah.
it is pretty dangerous going in there like that. But if you're going for the bounty rune, especially the top one on Dire side, then it's pretty secure. And what I really like about MVP's lineup, though, is the combination that they have with the Lina and the Bloodseeker. Late game, if you can Blood Rage the Lina when she has Aghanim Scepter, there's almost nobody that can stand up to that. But just be so careful, because if the Rubik steals it and counters it back, it's so painful.
Yeah, the Gyrocopter, especially kind of early on, before we see a lot of those late game items, he is pretty dependent on his BKB and may not necessarily have the stats to stand up against that kind of raw pure damage.
Yeah, so G in this mid lane, look at that. So what MP is going to do is get a right-click lead on him early, and he's just going to blow as many charges as he can, because you want to pressure the TA as much as possible, especially since she's not rushing the bottle. You can get away with this. She has 2 refract charges left, so she's going to pop the Salve here, but she can use refract twice. But as long as MP gets aggressive on her non-stop like this, it makes it really difficult for G to justify coming up for this. So she pops it, MP's immediately going to right-click her twice as a result of this, because of the range advantage, and just cast stun whenever he can, just to get an advantage. Like, he's even going to get the Fury Soul at level 2 so he can continue to do this.
Yeah, no need to put out the Dragon Slave when it's the attack speed going to be all the more valuable versus Refraction. And there's not really much that VP can do to make sure that G does well. They just kind of have to play passive on this mid. The Earthshaker rotation isn't going to be that valuable. Sunbeam is going to take some damage. He actually is going to be hit by the Fissure as well. Illidan going for the dive now underneath the tower. He pops the cogs knowing that he's going to die anyway. He just tries to get a little bit more damage onto Illidan, but it does.
Oh, he might actually
die. He's dead. Well played. Sunbeam realizing that he was going to die no matter what there, goes ahead and cogs Illidan inside underneath that tier 1 tower, and they are able to get at least a counter kill, even if he's not there for the experience.
He's going to be so dissatisfied with that, because I don't think he expected the death, but the tower just continues to lay into him, and there weren't enough creeps nearby, I guess, for him to draw off the aggro, but his farm isn't even ideal, so Sunbeam, I don't think he wanted to die there, but that's the best of a poor situation. And
yeah, I mean, a tri-lane, especially one that involves a Rubik, is always going to be super dangerous for a Clockwork because you can't depend on cogs to protect yourself.
Yeah. The thing is that Bloodseeker is pretty good against zoning out the Tusk, but I imagine that DK Phobos would have the easier time than Sunbeam. But after that counter kill, it's probably pretty even.